Why are we in education? I think that's a question I would like to answer and to deal with. First of all, let me tell you, I became a teacher way back in the mid 1950s. I left Makerere in 1956 and I went to teach in my old school, the Kagumo High School in Nyeri. That was 1956. Since then, I've done one or two other things for a short period, but otherwise, I have been a teacher, really. Teaching at Kagumo High School, teaching at Thika High School, teaching in others. And so, having started as a teacher, but you know, this is taking us very, very far back. Kirui, let us switch off that thing.
No, don't worry, Chairman.
You would do it, let it go on, let it go.
On, yes.
What I would like to ask a question from Kirui is, we are talking about the university, really.
Yes. But there's a journey that has seen to the university.
Correct,
Yes, so
correct,
asking what has
correct.
been the process.
Let me therefore, Kirui, tell you where I think we should start. How did we find ourselves with the university, the two of us? And I think that's a point you wanted to establish and to know as a starting point. How did we find ourselves with the university? The journey to the university is quite long, but we have been running schools, private schools, the Riara group of schools, private schools, for many years, really since 1970, 74. And since that time, I think we feel that we have done quite a good job with the schools, starting with the kindergarten on Riara Road, going on to primary school, Riara Road. Later on, we expanded our schools to Riara Springs near Imara Daima on the year 2000. Today, in the schools, we have over 3,000 children, right, in our 5 schools, right, including 1 high school. Having done the schools for more than 25 years, is this 25 years, right? There came a time when we felt, both my wife and I, that why don't we move to the next level and start the Riara University, or start a university. And the name was going to be, naturally, the Riara University. Reason being, we could see the need. Just as earlier on we had seen the need for schools, private schools, because the demand for schools in Kenya and Nairobi in particular was so much that the public schools were not providing all the places, were not able to fill the need. The same thing was happening at the university level, and we could see that. There are far too many students who wanted to get to university in Kenya, and therefore we said, just as we have done the schools, we feel reasonably successfully, why not move the next stage to start the Riara University? So that is how we moved to Mbagathi Way, acquired a piece of land, and built the Riara University. Right?
Excellent. E.G., what would be your contribution to this?
I think it's also, maybe starting from where he was starting, that as teachers by choice. We were teachers by choice. And therefore, if already when you train as a teacher, you have a passion for education.
So, let's continue.
Once you begin interacting with students, then you see how you can change their lives. When we started the kindergarten, it was very important for us to see how children start learning formally, and, for example, children who come to school without a word of English, how they learn English from day one, and how that language develops to become the language of instruction. So the process itself for us is very exciting. We started teaching at the secondary school level, but even there, when you teach any subject and you try to evaluate what it is you have achieved, you can see that actually you've made a difference in the life of a student. So that is really the passion and the fact that we were able to connect education to the development of a nation. The fact that for a nation to develop, it must have educated human resource. So the university, quite an ambitious subject, a project like you can see, was one answer to that question really. In what way can we move from the kindergarten to the primary to this high school, where we felt that we had done some good work. It was successful. And for example, all our girls in the high school, all of them would find a place in universities. In Kenya, elsewhere, they would qualify. But when you read the national statistics, when they announce after the universities pick who they want to pick or who they think is qualified, you found so many students being left out. And I think that's what really fired us to start a university. Why not provide yet another route for these students who are left out to come in and continue with their education? There were very many, and that picture was depressing. And every year the numbers increased because Kenya had managed to increase education at the other levels, but not at the higher level. We didn't have as many universities as we have in Kenya today. But even today, you know that we are not able to accommodate everybody. So the university was born out of that passion to pursue education, to produce qualified human resource for Kenya, and also to provide a space for those students who would otherwise not be accommodated in the other universities that were existing at that time.
Let me add something to what Dr. Shukia has said about the passion for education. During our adult life, or in our adult life, my wife and I have traveled. From Kenya, we have traveled abroad, Europe, America, or the Far East, India, Malaysia, and countries in the Far East. As we traveled, we notice one thing, particularly in the Far East, that those countries are advancing very fast. In fact, the 10, 12, 15 years ago, when we went there 20 years ago, those countries were already far ahead of Kenya and other African countries. And we could not help asking ourselves, because as we traveled, both of us were teachers. And as we traveled and we saw how some of these countries in the Far East have developed, we could not help asking ourselves, why is that these countries have developed that much? Many of them were colonized by the British, just as Kenya was colonized by the British. But today, they are miles ahead in terms of development. As we asked ourselves that question, we came to one conclusion. Education was the one factor which made difference between the level of development in Kenya and the level of development in many of the Asian countries, education. So, as coming back to the subject of how we found ourselves in education, we were already managing our private schools, but I, in particular, started saying, really, private schools are all right, but for us to start catching up with some of these countries in the East, we must have universities to produce, if I may put it that way, the cutting edge for the Kenya development effort.
When you look at the horizon, where do you see the future of Riara University? Or how would you want it to be modeled?
Well, she will have something to say there, but where I cannot say exactly where. I don't think one can put a limit to where we see Riara University. But to put it in very general terms, we see Riara University continuing to make an important contribution in training the manpower, which my wife had just mentioned, the manpower which will help Kenya get to the next level. But my wife, I'm sure, can put it in her own words.
Not to be just like any other university. We had experience teaching it at the public universities, for example, and where you had, for example, uncontrolled numbers, it becomes very difficult if you really got the passion of a teacher to move from a class of 100 to 500. You felt ineffective. So there are some ideals that went into the creation of Riara University. And that was making it slightly different, especially in terms of the quality of interaction between the teacher, what we call the faculty, and the students. We wanted the students to have a really pleasant experience at Riara, where they are not just sitting in class listening to this guru of a lecturer, taking notes, and then going to do their own studies and so on. You've noticed that the Riara student becomes sharp. Why? Because they don't come to class empty-headed. They are supposed to have done some preparation prior to whatever lecture they are going to get from the lecturer. So there's no lecture really, it's dialogue between students and their teachers. It is this is what we envisage, and it's happening, and we are very happy about it. As far as we know, that is what is happening. What difference does it make when you are made to do some work yourself, to research a topic that is going to be covered in the next lesson? It means that you are a participant. You are not just a passive listener to somebody who is teaching you, who has all the knowledge. It's a partnership. And where I read something, I got it wrong, my lecturer will correct it and help me to do better research in future. Our students are made to go to the library, they are made to go to the internet, and by the time they come to class, they are ready to participate in the class. I think that is different. If it happens in my lifetime, I'll be very happy, because in my own mind, and I have seen it now, especially in some of the faculties, we are already producing students in the first year, second year, and now third year, and now those who are graduating, people who can think for themselves, people who can critique any statement that is made, people who are innovative in the way they look at matter, in the way they look at what people say or do. In other words, these are going to be the people to develop our nation. That's really what you are, hoping will be achieved. So long term, I see that dream. I see that dream already being achieved. Because if you listen to our graduates, regardless of faculty, whether it's education, law particularly, because it's more interactive, it appears, right? Business, if you listen to our students articulating some of the things that they are learning or they are researching, you can already see a lot of difference. The fact that they get outsiders to come and interact with them at class level, at the university level, and they run those seminars like it's their own, and they ask questions, they ask international speakers questions that I would never have thought they would be able to ask. That is the difference, and I think that is what creates a different product. That's what I expect our graduates to be like, and I can already see that.
This has been a journey for over 40 years. What do you attribute the success to?
I think before we move on to the next question,
Yes.
it's what Dr. Ashuke is saying here about what happens in our schools or at the university comes to a large extent from our back.